Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The moment Lily Winters uttered those three shocking words that would hang in the air like a blade ready to fall, the entire trajectory of her fragile, complicated relationship with Cain Ashby shifted into a dangerous and heartbreaking direction, because when she looked him dead in the eyes, with tears streaking her cheeks and fury radiating from every tense muscle in her body, Lily whispered, "I'm getting rid." And though those three words seemed simple on their surface, the devastation they carried was monumental, cutting Cain to the core, forcing him to stumble back in shock as though she had physically struck him, because in that instant he realized that his reckless choices, his dishonesty, his flirtations with betrayal, and his inability to value her trust had led her to the darkest conclusion a woman in her position could ever make, that the child she carried, the baby that was supposed to be a symbol of renewed hope and reconciliation, was now nothing more than a reminder of the pain he had caused her, a living embodiment of his failures as a husband, and Lily, strong-willed yet emotionally battered, decided that she would not, bring another life into the world under the shadow of a fractured marriage filled with secrets and lies. So her declaration was not just about terminating a pregnancy, but about reclaiming her power, her autonomy, her agency after years of being caught in the endless cycle of Cain's betrayals and apologies, because Lily had always been the one to forgive, the one to smooth things over, the one to put the family first even when her own happiness was suffocated, and now, standing in that suffocating silence between them, she finally took back control, yet Cain, wide-eyed and trembling, felt the floor drop out beneath him as regret surged through every vein in his body, because this was not some passing marital squabble that could be fixed with flowers, promises, and desperate kisses. This was the ultimate consequence of his selfishness, and so he dropped to his knees before her, his hands clutching at hers as though trying to tether her to the life they once shared, begging her with every ounce of his being to reconsider, to give him one more chance, to not punish the innocent child for his mistakes. But Lily, her jaw tightening with a resolve he had rarely seen before, pulled her hands away and shook her head, because her mind was made up, and as much as Cain pleaded, as much as he let his tears fall freely, as much as he swore he would change and become the man she once believed he could be, Lily had already been pushed too far, and while a part of her heart ached with the thought of what she was about to do, another part felt the faintest glimmer of freedom, because to her, this choice was not about cruelty but about survival. About refusing to be tethered to a man who had shattered her trust time and time again, about refusing to bring a child into a world where resentment would fester in every corner of the household, and Cain, broken and hollow, realized too late that his greatest fear was coming true. Not only was he losing the child, but he was also losing Lily, for her shocking words were not just a declaration of an abortion but a symbolic severing of ties, a warning shot across the bow of their marriage. And though he begged on that living room floor until his voice was hoarse, until his knees ached, until his pride was stripped away completely, Lily turned away, her silhouette framed by the cold window light, whispering that this was her body, her choice, her life, and nothing he said could change that. And Cain, left trembling in the silence of his own regrets, understood that no matter how much he begged, pleaded, or promised, sometimes words were sharper than knives. And those three shocking words from Lily had already carved a scar deep enough to alter their lives forever. Cain remained on his knees long after Lily had turned her back, the weight of those three words crushing him like an avalanche he could not escape, and though he wanted to scream, to rage, to demand that she take back what she said, he knew deep inside that the look in her eyes, the finality, the cold steel wrapped in heartbreak, meant she wasn't bluffing, she wasn't trying to hurt him with empty threats, she had already made up her mind. And that realization left him in a place darker than anything he had ever faced before. He stumbled to his feet, pacing wildly across the living room like a caged animal, clutching his hair, muttering fragments of pleas, apologies, promises, as if words alone could undo years of damage. But Lily, her back straight and her arms crossed tightly around her midsection, refused to meet his gaze, because she knew if she looked at him for too long, her resolve might crack. Her compassion might sneak through, and she couldn't afford to let his tears sway her decision anymore, not this time. She remembered too many nights when she had forgiven him, after his lies, after his supposed mistakes, after his flirtations with temptation that turned into near disasters, and every time she had convinced herself that Cain loved her enough to finally change, yet every time she ended up broken all over again. So now, with her hand resting on her stomach, Lily whispered to herself that she wasn't just doing this for her, she was doing it for the unborn child too, because no child deserved to grow up in a household full of suspicion, resentment, and quiet misery, and no mother deserved to spend the rest of her life wondering if she had made a mistake by tying herself even further to a man who had taken her love for granted. Cain's voice cracked as he whispered her name, "Lily, please, please don't do this," and the sound of it, so raw and desperate, sliced into her heart like a knife, because despite everything, she still loved him, she still felt that pull toward him that had once been irresistible, but love without trust was poison, and she had swallowed too much of it already. Cain closed the space between them, gripping her arms gently but firmly, trying to anchor her to the version of them he wanted her to remember, the passion, the laughter, the family they had once built together, but Lily pulled away as if his touch burned, shaking her head, whispering through clenched teeth that he couldn't fix this with words anymore. She told him flatly that she had already made an appointment, that she wasn't waiting for his approval, that this wasn't his decision to make, and those words sent him reeling, because for the first time in his life, Cain truly felt powerless. He had always been able to talk his way back, to charm, to beg, to swear on everything sacred that he would do better, but this time none of it was enough, because Lily wasn't bargaining, she was deciding, and the realization that she had taken back control terrified him in ways he hadn't known possible. Still, Cain wasn't ready to surrender. He collapsed back onto the couch, his face buried in his hands, his voice trembling as he admitted, maybe for the first time honestly, that he had destroyed everything good in their lives, that he had been selfish, weak, arrogant, blind to how much he was hurting her, and that he would never forgive himself if she went through with this. His sobs filled the room, heavy and broken, but Lily, standing near the window with her shoulders squared, closed her eyes and let his words wash over her without moving, because if she let herself absorb them, she might falter, and she couldn't, she wouldn't. For once, she had to think about what was right for her, not what was right for Cain, not what was right for the fragile illusion of family they had been desperately clinging to. But even as she fought to hold her ground, doubt began to whisper at the edges of her resolve. She thought of the times Cain had been good to her, the moments when his love felt pure and unwavering, the times he had stood by her during her illness, the way he had once been her anchor. Were those moments lies? Or were they proof that somewhere deep down, Cain really did love her but simply couldn't control his destructive impulses? Her mind spun, her heart aching with the weight of conflicting truths, and though she told herself that her decision was final, the truth was, she was terrified. Terrified of being judged. Terrified of waking up one day regretting the choice she was making. Terrified of bringing a child into this chaos. Terrified of not bringing it. Every possibility felt like a punishment, and she hated that Cain's actions had left her here, in this impossible space. Cain, sensing even the faintest flicker of hesitation in her silence, seized on it desperately. He crawled across the carpet toward her, gripping at her knees, looking up at her with tear-soaked eyes, begging her to reconsider just one more time, swearing that he would go to therapy, that he would bare his soul, that he would cut ties with anyone who had ever been a temptation, that he would give up everything, his job, his pride, his entire world, if it meant keeping her and the baby. He told her that he would never forgive himself if she went through with it, that the weight of that choice would haunt them both forever, and he painted vivid pictures of what could be, a nursery filled with warmth, siblings bonding over laughter, a chance at redemption for their fractured family. His words, desperate and pleading, clawed at Lily's heart, and though she clenched her fists to stop herself from shaking, she could feel her defenses starting to tremble under the weight of his remorse. Still, Lily reminded herself of every time Cain had sworn to change before and failed, every time she had clung to hope only to be left shattered. She told him in a whisper that she couldn't gamble her future, or the future of a child, on his promises anymore. She told him that sometimes love wasn't enough, sometimes trust once broken couldn't be rebuilt, and that maybe the bravest thing she could do was to step away, even if it broke her heart in the process. Cain wept harder, his arms wrapping around her legs like a drowning man clinging to driftwood, but Lily gently pried him off, her voice steady but her eyes glistening as she told him that she didn't need his forgiveness, and she didn't need his permission. She was going to make the choice she felt was right, no matter how much he begged. And in that moment, the silence that followed felt deafening, the kind of silence that comes only when two people realize that the love between them may no longer be enough to save what's been lost. Kane sat broken, unable to move, while Lily walked toward the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her, leaving him with nothing but the echoes of his regrets and the knowledge that her 3 shocking words had shattered the foundation of everything they had once built together. The night stretched endlessly after Lily closed that bedroom door, leaving Kane slumped on the couch with his face buried in his hands, the house eerily silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the sound of his ragged breathing. He wanted to storm into the bedroom, fall to his knees beside her, and refuse to let her sleep until she promised not to go through with it, but the truth was, he no longer had the right. She had shut him out, literally and emotionally, and for the first time in their marriage, Kane understood what it felt like to be on the outside of Lily's heart, banging against locked doors that would not open. He stayed awake all night, pacing, whispering to himself, writing and rewriting apologies in his head that he knew would never be enough, and by the time dawn filtered through the curtains, his face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, his entire body trembling from exhaustion. When Lily finally emerged from the bedroom, dressed in a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a bun, she looked calm on the outside, but Kane knew that calm was fragile, a carefully built mask hiding the storm raging beneath. She wouldn't meet his eyes as she grabbed her bag, and Kane felt his stomach twist when he realized she was already preparing to leave for the clinic. "Lily, please," he rasped, his voice cracked from hours of crying. Just give me one more chance. Don't go today. Delay it, even for a week. Please, let's talk to someone, Devon, Neil's memory, a counselor, anyone. Please don't do this." Lily paused by the door, her back still to him, and her fingers clenched around the strap of her bag. Her silence was deafening. Kane took a step forward, desperation dripping from every syllable. "I swear to you, I'll never hurt you again. I'll prove it. I'll spend every day proving it, but don't punish the baby for my mistakes." The word baby came out like a dagger, cutting the space between them. Lily spun around, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anguish and fury, and shouted, "It's not a baby yet, it's a decision I have to live with, not you." Her voice shook, echoing through the room, and then she lowered her tone, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "And I can't. I can't raise a child with someone I don't trust." Those words knocked the air out of Kane's lungs. He staggered back as if she had physically shoved him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the silence broken only by Lily's uneven breaths. Then, without another glance at him, she opened the door and stepped outside, closing it softly behind her. Kane felt like the house itself collapsed in that instant, every wall pressing in on him as he collapsed onto the floor, gripping his chest as though he could hold his breaking heart together with his bare hands. Lily drove in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every mile closer to the clinic felt like another stone placed on her chest, but she forced herself to keep going. She told herself over and over again that this was the right choice, that she was protecting herself from a lifetime of pain, but her inner voice was ruthless, whispering reminders of Kane's tears, his pleas, the way he had looked at her as if she were his last breath. She thought about Devon, about how he might try to convince her differently, about Jill, who would certainly interfere if she knew, about the legacy of her family, how Neil would have counseled her, how her children would see her strength or her weakness depending on what she did. Every thought was a hammer to her chest, but she kept driving. Meanwhile, Kane refused to give up. He grabbed his phone, his hands shaking, and dialed Jill. The moment she answered, he broke down, telling her everything in a rush, Lily's shocking words, her decision, her appointment. Jill gasped, her voice sharp with disbelief. "She can't, Kane, you can't let her do this." Kane choked back a sob and said, "I've tried. She won't listen to me. Please, you have to help me. Talk to her. Stop her." Jill's voice hardened with resolve. "Text me the clinic address. I'll be there." Kane hesitated. Part of him knew Lily would see this as yet another betrayal, another violation of her boundaries, but his panic overrode his reason. He sent the address, whispering a silent prayer that maybe Jill could succeed where he had failed. Back in the car, Lily's phone buzzed in her purse, but she ignored it. She knew Kane wouldn't stop trying, and she couldn't bear to hear his voice again. When she finally pulled into the clinic parking lot, her chest tightened, and she sat frozen behind the wheel for several minutes, staring at the building as if it were both a sanctuary and a prison. She whispered to herself, "Be strong, Lily. You can do this." Then, with trembling hands, she pushed open the car door and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the sterile white walls and quiet hum of machines wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. A receptionist smiled kindly, handing her paperwork, but Lily barely registered the words. She sat in the waiting area, filling out forms with hands that shook so violently she could barely write her name. Around her, other women sat silently, each carrying their own stories, their own burdens, and Lily felt both utterly alone and strangely connected to them. She placed a protective hand over her stomach and whispered, "I'm sorry," not even sure who she was apologizing to, herself, the child, Kane, or all three. Just as she was about to be called back, the clinic doors burst open and Jill stormed in, her presence commanding, her voice sharp as she called out, "Lily Winters." Heads turned, and Lily's heart sank when she saw her mother-in-law striding toward her with fury and fear etched across her face. "What are you doing here?" Jill demanded, her voice low but trembling. "Kane told me everything. You can't do this, Lily. Not like this." Lily stood, her eyes flashing with both anger and shame. "This is my choice, Jill. Mine. You don't get a say." Jill's voice cracked with desperation as she pleaded, "Think about what you're doing. Think about the family, about Kane, about the future. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she shook her head. "No, Jill. I'll regret staying in a marriage that suffocates me, that keeps me chained to pain. This is about survival." The confrontation drew the attention of a nurse, who gently intervened, asking Jill to leave if she wasn't there for an appointment. Jill turned to Lily one last time, whispering, "Don't let your anger at Kane cost you everything. Please." Lily bit her lip so hard it nearly bled, torn between fury at Kane for betraying her confidence by calling Jill and the small, nagging voice inside her that whispered Jill might be right. At that exact moment, Kane appeared in the doorway, breathless, his eyes red and swollen, his shirt wrinkled from the sleepless night. He looked at Lily as if she were the only person in the world. "Please, Lily," he whispered across the waiting room. "Don't do this. Not today. Give me one more chance to prove myself. If I fail, if I hurt you again, then you'll never have to see me again. But please, don't end this now." Lily felt the room spin around her, her heart pounding as she looked from Kane to Jill to the nurse waiting patiently. She closed her eyes, her chest heaving with the impossible weight of the decision. And though every fiber of her being screamed for clarity, all she felt was chaos, love tangled with hate, hope laced with despair, and a decision that would change all of their lives forever hanging in the fragile silence. The silence inside the clinic was deafening, thick with the weight of every unspoken word, every unhealed wound, every memory of love and betrayal that bound Lily and Kane together in ways neither of them could fully escape. Lily's chest rose and fell rapidly as she stared at Kane, his body trembling in the doorway, his eyes swollen and red from a night of begging and weeping. Jill's hand lingered on Lily's arm, a silent plea for her to reconsider, but Lily pulled it back, needing space, needing clarity, needing to know that whatever choice she made was hers alone. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why now, Kane? Why do you only break down when it's almost too late? Why do you always wait until I'm at the edge of no return before you decide to fight for me?" Kane's lips parted, but no words came. His throat tightened with the truth he didn't want to admit, that he had taken her for granted, believing she would always forgive, always bend, always love him enough to weather his mistakes. The nurse stepped closer, her tone calm but firm. "Mrs. Ashby, we're ready for you. You don't have to decide right this moment, but if you want to continue, you can come with me now." Lily turned toward the nurse, then back to Kane, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to meet his gaze. The raw devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. He wasn't just pleading for a child, he was pleading for them, for the life they had built and nearly destroyed. Tears blurred Lily's vision as she whispered, "I can't trust you, Kane. I don't know if I ever will again. But I also don't know if I can live with this choice haunting me for the rest of my life." Her words cut him open, but at the same time, they planted the faintest seed of hope. She hadn't said it was final, not yet. Jill reached out, her voice trembling but strong. "Sweetheart, don't let today be a decision you make out of anger. You have every right to be furious, to be broken, but don't let Kane's mistakes push you into something you can't take back." The nurse waited patiently, clipboard in hand, while the room hung in suspended time. Lily's heart thundered in her chest as she pressed a trembling hand against her stomach. She felt Kane's eyes on her, burning with desperation, felt Jill's steady presence at her side, and felt the weight of her own fear threatening to crush her.